When the guns of the Second World War fell silent, the world should have known peace. But from the ruins of Europe rose two new powers, divided by fear, ideology, and ambition. What followed was not peace, but a new kind of war. A war fought not on battlefields, but in shadows. This is how the world was split in two. This is the Cold War begins.
In 1945, the Second World War ended with a victory, but not for everyone. Europe lay in ashes. Millions were homeless. Cities like Berlin, Warsaw, and Stalingrad were nothing but rubble. Two nations stood above all others, the United States and the Soviet Union. Together, they had defeated Nazi Germany, but their visions of the future could not have been more different. To the West, freedom meant democracy and capitalism. To the East, justice meant revolution and communism. Between them, a continent torn apart. At the peace tables, alliances began to crumble. The war had ended, but the struggle for the world had just begun.
Germany, once the heart of Hitler's empire, became the front line of the new conflict. The Allies divided it into 4 zones of occupation: American, British, French, and Soviet. But in the East, Stalin had other plans. Soviet armies, victorious across Eastern Europe, refused to withdraw. Instead, they installed loyal communist governments in Poland, Hungary, Romania, and beyond. Within months, half of Europe was behind what Winston Churchill would call an Iron Curtain. Behind that curtain, censorship, secret police, and one-party rule became the norm. In the West, the response was containment to stop communism from spreading. The world was dividing, not by borders of geography, but by borders of ideology.
In 1947, U.S. President Harry S. Truman announced a new policy, the Truman Doctrine. The United States would now support any nation threatened by communism, militarily, economically, or politically. It was not just a promise, it was a declaration of a new world order. 1 year later came the Marshall Plan, billions of dollars to rebuild Western Europe. Cities rose from ruins, factories reopened. For the West, it meant prosperity. For the Soviets, it meant betrayal. Stalin saw the plan not as aid, but as a weapon. A way for the U.S. to control Europe through money instead of armies. The lines were drawn. The Cold War had begun.
In 1948, the divided city of Berlin became the first true battlefield of the Cold War. Stalin cut off all road and rail access to West Berlin, hoping to starve the Western powers out. 2 million civilians were trapped behind Soviet lines. The answer came from the sky. For nearly a year, Allied aircraft delivered food, coal, and medicine to the city. 1 plane every 45 seconds, day and night. It became known as the Berlin Airlift, a triumph of endurance and logistics. By 1949, Stalin gave up. Berlin was saved, but the world was now truly divided.
That same year, the West formed NATO, a military alliance built to defend against the Soviet threat. One attack on any member would mean war with all. In response, the Soviets formed the Warsaw Pact, 2 armed camps facing each other across Europe.
And now both had a weapon that could end humanity in an instant. The atomic bomb, once a symbol of victory, had become a symbol of fear. The Cold War was no longer a political struggle. It was a race for survival.
For the next 4 decades, the world would live under the shadow of the bomb. Children practiced hiding under desks. Nations built fallout shelters. Espionage, propaganda, and proxy wars would replace open battle. The age of empires had ended. The age of ideology had begun. From the ruins of the Second World War, humanity had built a fragile peace, one armed to the teeth.
The Cold War began, not with gunfire, but with silence, a silence divided by walls, borders, and fear. For nearly half a century, that tension would shape the destiny of every nation on Earth. This was not peace, it was the balance of terror. This was The Cold War Begins. The guns fell silent, but a new war began in the shadows. Witness how the world split in two during the dawn of the Cold War.